Hello there, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Apologies for not uploading on this channel for a short while. I was away on holiday. However, I came back and I've been watching this speech from Charlie Kirk's wife, the recently assassinated Charlie Kirk. And I saw online there was a lot of noise about her stating she'd forgiven his killer. And as you may well be aware, forgiveness is central to Christianity, and Kirk and his wife were devout Christians. And I wanted to explore this theme of forgiveness because I think it's central to the Christian tradition for a very important reason. One I think we often overlook and sometimes misunderstand. I know I misunderstood the nature of forgiveness for a long time. And you can see people online at the moment sensing it's almost unjust, in their view, to forgive such a heinous and evil act. Why on earth would you forgive someone who's done something so awful? They don't deserve charity and peace, They deserve judgment and severe retribution. And in one sense, that's very human to have that response. It's not normal to wish to see people who've done awful things walk away without paying the price. But I think we have to understand as well what the Christian tradition is talking to, as well as just the raw spiritual nature of forgiveness and what it talks to, whether you're Christian or not. Now, from the top, I think you have to be really careful with forgiveness. I've done a lot of one-on-one work with men over the years, and forgiveness is always a tricky one because some people know they should forgive or are told they should forgive and just do it because it's a commandment in the Christian faith or because they think it's spiritually wise to do so. But they haven't actually forgiven. And that's really dangerous. Because if you say you've forgiven and you haven't loosened the burden within, you'll be really tortured. And I've seen that happen to people. So the first thing to say is we should be very, very careful with the nature of forgiveness and not force yourself to do anything. It should happen naturally. Again, there's a spiritual element to forgiveness which takes over that I've experienced and seen it in others as well. That's true forgiveness. It's beyond you. And this is the first thing to say about Charlie Kirk's wife, Erica Kirk. I don't know whether she has hit that place within or not. She may be a very spiritually attuned person and have already been able to forgive. People like that do exist. She may be saying it because it's demanded by her faith and have a lot of work to do over the years to truly let go. I just don't know, and there's not really much point in going down that road anymore because it's her journey with the divine. But the point I'm making here is we have to say from the top, people are right when they do point out that forgiveness can be dangerous if it's practiced incorrectly. So we have to start by saying forgiveness is a major process for many of us and it takes time. My own experience has been it's like watering a plant, and that plant has to grow and grow and grow and eventually it produces the fruit and then the fruit drops off and that's when you're free of whatever it was that irked you. Now, as we go through that process, I think it's really important, again, to say from the very top that when we say you've forgiven someone, you don't mean that you believe they aren't due justice in or via the law, via human law. So Erica Kirk is not saying, I forgive you, ergo, you should walk away scot-free. She will obviously be very pro this fella, looks like a young man who's done this, being dealt with by the law, and he may get the death penalty. So again, justice will be served in a roundabout way, and you can pursue justice while forgiving as well. Forgiveness doesn't mean you don't pursue justice. It means that you free yourself of the burden of the pain that's destroying you from within. And the only way I can really articulate that is how I experienced it in my own life. I've spoken before on the channel. I had a very violent upbringing, lots of physical abuse in my home growing up, specifically from my older brother who was unwell. Now, of course, I've worked through it and can see he was unwell now. He's passed on now. But for years, I carried it around. It really wounded me. The place where I was supposed to feel the most safe, with the people I was supposed to feel the most safe, I felt deeply wounded by them. Now, the thing for me was that anger I had, that resentment towards not just my brother, but the world. It almost became an identity, and I couldn't see it because I felt this raw sense of justice What's happened to me is wrong. If people knew what happened to me, they would be more sympathetic to me. And it almost became, if I'm truly honest, a bit of a shield through which I could make excuses for how I was dealing with life. It structured how I thought about the world itself. So forgiveness, truly understood, is about freeing your spirit from identity with the world. Now, we can view that on one level, on the psychological level, of if you let go of anger towards a person, that person no longer defines the narratives that are created in your mind or your sense of identity, and you're free to complete your life without the boundaries and shackles that you once had. That would be sort of level one understanding. But we can take that to a higher level, which I think the Christian tradition is talking to. This is what Christ means when he's on the cross saying, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Man, through the Christian lens, is in a fallen state. That would say something like, whether you view it literally or symbolically, we were once totally one with God. Adam didn't know he was called Adam. He just was. He was completely connected to God's being. He wasn't separate in any sense. Now, as we know from the story, he followed the woman, big metaphor there, and ate from the tree of good and evil, and became aware of morality, or at least had a basic understanding of morality. I don't think we can truly grasp good and evil as it really is. But through the mind, we can have a basic understanding, and that's what happened to Adam, and that separated him from God. In the Christian tradition, again, that's the fallen state. You've let sin in. This is where death comes in and everything. Again, in the mystic understanding, there is no death because all life is ever present now. You and I might die in our individual life, but the life energy can never die. There is no off switch. It's just pure being. And again, that probably understood is what it means to be with God. And this is what the East would call enlightenment, returning to that stage. In the Christian mystic tradition, it would be following Christ back to God. Christ is basically returning Adam home, again, symbolically speaking. But the point is here that we forgive because our angers and our annoyances and our traumas tie us to the physical world. They tie us to our fallen state. They tie us to our small self-identity. That's just small Richard and his concerns in his mind. The spiritual doorway has always been open to have a way out from all of that. It doesn't mean that your life disappears, once you embrace this path truly. And many people say they do embrace it, but don't really. And some people really do. The great Christian mystics speak wonderfully about this recognition of shedding the skin, if you like, of the small self, the external self, and the real recognition of true life, which is God, the animating force of being itself. And again, that's a mystery. That's why it's called mysticism. But you contemplate deeply on the mystery via the heart. You can't understand it via the mind. But in this process, you will find what Christ calls the peace that passes all understanding. You return home to what you truly are. Now, that doesn't mean your individual life ends. You still live your day-to-day life like anybody else in a fallen world. You recognize your fallen side as a man, But the point is, you're not tied to it anymore. And this is why forgiveness is so central. This is why resentment is mentioned so much as well in the Christian tradition. Harboring these resentments tie you to this small self, and that will tie you to the emotions, which can be unruly and wild, and sometimes dark forces can manipulate you, when you're lost in anger. Very rarely do we act out in anger and maintain our composure. We've all experienced that, whether it's an argument with your wife or getting a punch up when you're 18 down at the pub. Things get out of control. And then you look at it in the cold light of day, a couple of days down the line, and you think, yeah, I was probably lost control a bit there. Again, in the Christian understanding, that's the demonic force, took you away. And this is why, again, there is this focus on composure. As I often say on the main channel, it's not about not taking action, it's about taking right action. And right action is always there for us if we're still. But again, you need to do the spiritual work to get there. But the point I'm making here is the nature of forgiveness and the power of resentment is so vital, because these things tie us into the small self. And forgiveness is essentially the loosing of those things. And we have to be really careful here, because if you're thinking about embarking on these practices yourself, don't try and be Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. hidely ho, doodly do, everything's wonderful. That's not going to work. That's basically what you'll do is you'll suffocate your darkness to such an extent it'll explode at some point. We've probably all seen that in various people who maybe a bit too nice, and they haven't really mastered their dark side. I think the true way is to really go through the darkness. And however you do that is up to you. There are many different ways of working through whatever we've got to work through. For me, it involved sometimes just going to hit a punching bag. Sometimes it involved talking to people I trusted. Sometimes it involved prayer and contemplation, reading, somatic techniques, that's getting into the body, shaking, all sorts of things to work this through. For me, prayer was a big one as well. I remember working through this stuff because I realised I kind of hit the wall in my late 20s and thought, something's just not right fundamentally with me. And what it was, I was holding on to these angers. And there was a lot in there with my brother because he passed on by then. So there was a lot of sadness for him, but at the same time I was harbouring this anger as well, which is a strange place to be. And a friend of mine at the time offered some very helpful advice, which was, if you can't pray for him, can you pray for his soul? And that really helped me because I think we can pray for anybody's soul, because the soul, if you like, is that link between the man and the divine. It's the essence which makes somebody worthy, if you like. And I could do that, and quite quickly I found the resentment just left. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to lie about it, saying, I've let go of it. It just left, and I was freed. And I could see my brother for what he was, a lost child. And then I could have true empathy for him and start to work through what had happened, But the point I'm making with all of this is this loosing of resentment, of anger, comes with a deep understanding of our fallen nature as people. And that's why Christ says, forgive them for they know not what they do. He doesn't mean forgive their actions because they don't matter. Their actions are terrible. They're killing God after all. I mean, it's as bad as anything could be. But he's saying they don't understand. They don't understand. And that's the key. And they don't understand because they're locked in that fallen self. They're almost trapped in a demonic psychology. But their true nature, their soul nature is beyond all of that. And that is true with everyone, because everyone is in that same core being that gives life to us, or God if you're religious. It's God in whom we have our being. So forgiveness, if you like, is that recognition of that. And the point is that, again, if we stay locked in these angers towards the world, we will never break free. We'll never return to what we are and recognize the truth of life. And that doesn't mean that life is wonderful. It's still brutal. It's still horrible. Terrible things still happen. And those things need to be dealt with. At no point would Erica Kirk or I or any other Christian believer or spiritualist say that Charlie Kirk's killer doesn't deserve retribution from the law, earthly law. And if that's the death penalty in the state he's in, so be it. That's up to the, authorities to decide in the country they're in. But the point is, you don't pay twice for the sin that's been brought upon you. Otherwise you'll stay locked in sin. That's where the great teaching, if you forgive others of their sins, your Father will forgive you. It's a deeply karmic teaching, that element of the Christian tradition. And again, the point is, when you forgive the other, your soul, if you like, you return to your truer, deeper nature. That's the point. And again, maybe mainline Christians would view it more logically, as in God's there kind of, like a puppet master pulling strings. I view it much more karmically, as in it's a real effect that will happen in your life. If you loose resentment to others, you'll find you have more peace within. And again, that doesn't mean that you don't pursue justice in the world. But I think this is a really important one to explore and understand properly. Because like I say, it's so vital to understand that it doesn't mean due justice isn't right. You can pursue that with all your heart and do what's correct, but it's about freeing yourself. So as I say, you don't pay twice for a sin, because the sin's going to hurt enough, and then you have to work through it to root it out of you. Otherwise it's just going to, pin you down and destroy your life. So many people get mixed up in drink and drugs and all sorts of pain because of a wounding that they haven't been able to let go of. And I want to say as well, if you are dealing with any of this, give yourself space and time. You're not meant to be able to just click your fingers and it magically goes away, especially in this day and age where we don't really have much spiritual guidance. It takes time sometimes to work through these things. Sometimes you've got to go around it in different ways, like I did, trying to understand it. And bit by bit, it starts to loosen. It will go by itself. Like I say, it's like a bit of fruit that has to ripen and it will just drop off. Some people fast, some people slow. But the main thing is that we're doing the real spiritual work. If you do need any help with that, feel free to reach out to me. Do the one-on-one work, the group work I'll be doing again soon. Courses available as well down below. Other than that, all the best to you all. Again, apologies for not uploading for a while. I'll be back to a regular schedule now. Take care.